Hey guys, it's Justin here from Pop Band Classics. Today we're going to be doing a gauge install with an Acewell Speedo onto my 2010 Bonneville America that's been highly customised. Alright, the gauge we're going to be installing today is the Acewell CA080 series. This one's black anodised. They come with a full sweep tacho. It's got speedo inbuilt along with temperature, a lot of your warning lights, and most of the stuff that you need to get by without cluttering up your dashboard too much. When you're thinking of installing your gauge, you want to get it somewhere where you've got a good line of sight. Acewell throw in these great little brackets that bolt onto the back. They're really nice sleek design at the back too, so you can have it up in the middle of nowhere and it'll still look good on its own. On my bike myself, I've made this little nacelle piece which is going to tuck in here behind. So I'll do that now. Alright, we've just refitted the custom nacelle that I've made for this bike and tucked away nicely in there is the Acewell gauge. You want to be mindful of where your wiring is going to be routed in these situations. So this one here fits nicely under the tank, it's easy to get to. Alright, obviously most of the wiring is going to be under your fuel tank, so this one just resting in place. We'll pop it off. Okay, this loom I've highly modified to suit this bike as it's changed shape quite significantly, which has also made it really easy for me to pinpoint all the wiring that we need for the gauge. I've already gone through and labelled what's what. The best bet for anyone trying to do this at home is to find a wiring diagram for your bike. You can pinpoint it from original components, but yeah, having a wiring diagram would just make life a lot easier for you. Okay, on your supplied Acewell diagram, you'll see it's divided into two plugs. You've got a smaller plug and a larger plug, which correspond to the two on the Speedo itself. In my loom, I've gone through and selected the wires that I need to match up with these two plugs and divided them up. Acewell supply two plugs that plug into it, so the job now is to cut these short enough and get them in a neat position and join them all together. If you look at the wiring diagram supplied, you'll notice there's a few blank spots which I've had to fill in. Your left indicator is the orange wire, right indicator is brown, the light green wire is your high-low boom switch, and the light blue should be your oil pressure. And if you look down here, the green wire corresponds to your speed sensor. You'll notice on the larger plug, it comes with a lot of different plugs attached to that and an earth loop. A lot of this stuff applies to bikes that don't really have these sensors installed. This bike does have most of these, so fortunately we get to just chop it off about here. We'll just quickly go over how we're going to join the wires. We're going to solder them up today, and the best way to do that is firstly roughly position where you think your plugs are going to sit, and then run your loom the same. Figure out the distance where you want to cut and join. When you've got your wires at the length that you want them, cut the ends off with some wire strippers to expose. I like to use about 10mm of wire exposed. Cut yourself some heat shrink, make sure you slip that over before you twist the two together. Give it a good twist so it looks something like this, and then you're ready to solder. Dip a bit on the iron, hold it and dab until you see it soak right in there. And that's it, that's a strong solder joint. And then you can either use a heat gun or just your trusty cigarette lighter to go over the top to shrink it. For this specific model, a lot of the stuff on here is already electronic. So for the speed sensor itself, we didn't have to install the one that's supplied. This already has one on it, so we've just wired that directly in. You'll see here I've blocked off a yellow and the blue wire. The yellow wire is the RPM pickup for bikes that don't have an ECU. This grey wire is the one that I've used today because mine sends a signal from the computer itself. So that's why I've plugged into this. And the blue wire I've got here is for the fuel level. But this one's actually for a fuel sensor. So this picks up the different levels that your fuel would be at if that's what your bike has. Unfortunately, this one just tells me if it's full or not. So that's the way I've wired that one up currently. Now we've got the gauge installed and all the wiring's done. We can tidy that all up a bit later, hide it away nicely. All the lights are working. Everything seems to be functioning as it should. What you want to do next is set up your speedo. Best thing to do, grab yourself a nice drink, sit down and read through the manual. It goes through it all step by step and it varies for your own bike. So you want to try and figure out what's going to be the best for you. Alright, now we're going to cover a few frequently asked questions about the Acewell Speedos. First off, a lot of people ask, is an Acewell going to suit my car or my bike? It's like, if it's got wheels and a motor, then yeah, it probably is. They're a standalone unit and they're designed to basically work with anything. So they've got a heap of different models. Basically, you just got to go through and pick the one that suits you the best. If you have a bike that doesn't run on a battery and you're wondering if there's a gauge for you, Acewell have the 1500 and the 1600 range that run their own internal battery. Unfortunately, they're only the most basic of options. If you're looking to run something a bit more substantial or one of their better gauges, your best bet is to get one of their Ace F351 power filters that converts an AC power supply to a DC, so you can use any one of their gauges that you like. There's a few ways that Acewell Speedos can sense the speed of your vehicle. One is with the magnetic read sensor supplied that works by a magnet passing the sensor every revolution of the wheel, which creates a signal and sends it to the speedo itself. Acewell also make numerous other sensors, including ones that can plug into your original mechanical cable drive and convert it into an electronic signal. They have a large selection of speedo adapters to suit numerous makes and models. Luckily with this model here, it already had an inbuilt speed sensor that I was able to tap into. Acewell gauges pick up their RPM reading by either using this yellow wire or this grey wire. As you can see, I've used the grey wire because this bike runs an ECU and it has an output wire for the RPM signal. The yellow wire here can be used on most other bikes by either wrapping it a few times around a spark plug lead itself or hooking it directly to the negative side of your ignition coil. If you have your yellow wire wrapped around the spark plug lead, one thing to try is to either wrap it a couple times more or unwrap it a few times and see if that helps. If it doesn't, Acewell has supplied a small resistor that you can put in line with either the negative terminal of the coil or where you've wrapped it around the spark plug lead itself. If your Acewell tacho is no longer acting erratic but it doesn't seem like it's giving the right reading, best option is to go through and cycle through the RPM settings on the tacho itself. If your Acewell Speedo isn't reading correctly, it usually comes down to an incorrectly entered circumference. To find the correct circumference, choose the wheel that the speedo sensor is on and measure right around the very outside edge of your tyre. If you're using the read sensor that comes with the speedo itself, it picks up the signal every one revolution, so that circumference you measured can be entered directly into the speedo as it is. If you're using one of the S3 adapters, you'll have to count how many revolutions the adapter will spin when your tyre does one full revolution, and then divide that circumference amount by that number of rotations. Then enter that into the speedo and you shouldn't have a problem. Well, that about wraps it up for today. Hope this has helped you guys and girls in your garage. See you next time.